for accommodating and doing this, and thanks for setting up. What am I doing? Setting up Reid Ryan.
Yeah, it's great. Makes our planning less difficult.
Yeah. Well, the hard part is you're gonna talk to this dude, and you're gonna be like, let's just go for like an hour and a half because he's such a good dude.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy. I told you when I played in Alaska for 2 summers. I'll have to ask him. The third summer when I was on Team USA, we went to Alaska just to play the Bucks. I think Reid was on that team in Anchorage. I'll ask him.
Oh man.
And then
awesome.
but we had like Texan guys like Calvin Murray, and I mean this poster back here has like all the Anchorage Bucks. Half of them are Texas guys. I know Reid's not on there, but he'll be like, "Oh yeah, Calvin Murray." Oh, you know, I mean, anyway.
Sure.
So
he's got stories about everybody.
I bet. But and then obviously the film. I was telling Ramos the cast is great. Right? It's like, nice, Cali. Mine's plain old Whitey, but
just the Crate and Barrel Standard Edition.
Yeah, it must be. I actually need a cappuccino cup, but I'm not having a cappuccino today. So. Oh, look at the bottom.
Is it?
He nailed it. I'm like, I don't know what kind of cup it is.
Let me 15 of them in our cabinet.
I know, but when I go like this, like, look, I don't know what kind of cup it is, Blum.
Yeah.
How do I figure that out? All right, so we are recording, but should we do the intro now and then?
Yeah, we'll just treat it like a normal podcast up until like 11 or 12 after, and then just kind of stop and wait for him.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then we want to hear about the rodeo. And then what's on tap will be Reid, and we could probably, lock out Reid rodeo, and that'll probably be the whole podcast and get out by 11.
That would be cool. 3, 2.
Hey, there we go. 1 minute early. How about that?
Hey, that's how I know you're a ball player.
Yes, exactly. Oh, hey, you're not going to be late. Baseball players normally are not late because the bus leaves,
You ain't lying. The second that thing clicks onto 15, that bus is out of the parking lot.
I missed a few.
Gone. How you guys been doing?
Good. David Tuttle, Reid Ryan, David Tuttle.
Hey, David. How you doing, bud?
I'm well, man. I was saying I believe we met at some point, but the Anchorage Bucks, I believe, at some point.
Yes, nice. Were you a Buck or were you a Pilot?
So I was a Buck for 2 years. I was joking about this poster behind me because Calvin Murray's in this poster, but I was playing in 90. Then I played on Team USA in 91, and I think that's when you were a Buck.
Yeah,
so
you guys
some
came,
sort of,
you and Giambi, and you guys had a good team. That was fun.
Yeah, I love that you throw me in there with Giambi. That was great. We had an awesome team, and then I was on the team, but,
Well, what I remember about that is we had Patrick Ahern beat you guys for us, and the guy, his head was so big, we didn't have a hat that fit him, so they just cut it in the back.
Pitcher from A&M?
No, Pepperdine. So
okay.
Ahern and I were rivals
gotcha.
in the WCC, right? So I beat my sophomore year. My junior year was his sophomore year, and they were on the precipice of winning the.
He was the Oral Hershey.
They won
championship.
they won the national championship, man. It was crazy. I had him and Sky Lazowitz. You remember that guy? He was a reliever.
Oh yeah. I love that Reid knows all these dudes. I mean, this
Dude,
is
I'm
how
telling you,
Blum and I
He's got a
met.
story about everybody, and he remembers everybody. It's
But here's the best thing about Sky Lazowitz. The guy was kind of like, I don't know, Spicoli, and
He was cool.
he was like telling us about how he got pulled over in L.A. and the cop came up. They had been smoking weed, and the cop came up pissed, and he was like, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And he was like, 75, and he's like, "What?" He goes, "I said, you know how fast you were going?" He was like, 85, and he goes, "Get out of the car." And he goes, "Son, you were going 20 miles an hour on the freeway."
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
I love it.
That's great. That's Tommy Boy, or not Tommy Boy. That's
Black
the one
Sheep,
where he's
Tommy
got the
Boy, one of
nitrous.
those. Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, where he gets pulled over. I was going 7. You're going 7
Yeah,
miles.
exactly.
He was just
Yeah.
racing down the highway.
That's
Yeah.
funny. Those California kids.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll just make this. I have no idea what's going to happen because I know it's easy talking to you, but obviously we'll be talking about your film production debut.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. It'd be great.
All right. 3, 2. Welcome back to the Bleachers, and we have got a very special guest. This guy, I can't say enough good things about Reid Ryan, who's going to be on with us. And Reid is one of those guys that you obviously heard about because of his relationship to his father, Nolan Ryan, And Reid played minor league baseball. Reid moved into the business sphere of life and has been very successful with the Sanders Ryan Group, and has really had his hands in a lot of stuff, but always involved with baseball. And I can honestly say that I would not be in the position I am right now, not just on the bleachers, but in the broadcast booth with the Houston Astros, if it wasn't for Reid Ryan. So it is great to have Reid on, and I can finally say publicly, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great to be able to get in the booth and broadcast baseball, but it's equally as great to be on here and have you on. So thank you for coming on, Reid Ryan. How are you doing, man?
Geoff, I'm doing great, man. And hey, look, you were destined for greatness. There was no doubt about it. And I was just smart enough to say, hey, let's get this guy on the air more, and worked out. And look, you guys have a great broadcast team. You and Callis and Julia. I mean, it's magic. And that's kind of my legacy with the Astros. People say, what are you most proud of? I say we kind of put that young group together with a little bit of seasoning with Todd Callis, and you guys have been off to the races ever since then.
That is very kind of you, and anything to be related to the Ryan family is amazing. So I greatly appreciate the kind words. I'm having a blast doing it, and being able to stay in the game is awesome for me, because it's something that you and I are both passionate about. So is Tuttle on the other side.
Yep.
But I just wanted to ask you, you've got a project coming up, and if you're following Reid Ryan, you obviously know what it is, but I would like you to tell the fans of the bleachers and get the word out there on this project that you have accomplished and are about to release at South by Southwest.
Yeah, so we have been working the last 2 years on a film called Facing Nolan, and it's really kind of a tribute film to my dad's life and his career, which spanned 27 years in the major leagues, which is really hard to believe for those that have ever played the game, how extremely difficult that is. We've been in the game forever. We've owned AAA, AA teams. My dad was an owner and president of the Rangers. I was president of the Astros for 7 years, worked for him for 8 years. And so during that time, we've had a lot of people kind of approach us and say, hey, you guys should make a 30 for 30. We should, nobody's done anything on Nolan Ryan. And, to be honest, nobody really had the time to dig into it. And so when I left the Astros, my brother Reese and I started talking and saying, hey, look, we're having some run from people that are interested in doing something here. Let's go to school and see how these things are made, and let's dig in and see if we can make this happen. And so I think the key, and Geoff knows my dad a little bit, he has a little bit of a wall, but once you get past that and like you're in the locker room, the guys that played with him have a different opinion of the personality and the way my dad interacts with people versus maybe people that meet him for the first time. And so we felt like we had to get some Texas-based producers and directors. And so we found kind of a really cool team of guys. One guy named Russell Groves, who is a producer, an executive producer from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, lived in Austin a long time, now is in L.A., and a director named Bradley Jackson, who grew up here in Houston and also is in L.A. now. And not only were these guys Texans, but they had a bunch of skins on the wall. They had made some great films, and we just kind of connected with them and thought it would be a good fit with my dad. And here we are 2 years later, kind of through the pandemic, and we've put some really cool stuff on film, and I think people are going to enjoy it. And we're rolling it out for the first time to a live audience that isn't our family this weekend at South by Southwest in Austin on the 12th, March 12th.
That's awesome. It sounds like you do that with everything. Like you dig in. Bradley Jackson, isn't that the anchor on Morning Show or something? Isn't that Reese Witherspoon? That's even funnier that it's tied to that. I don't know. I was watching that show.
Very true.
So I hope I don't spoil anything because I obviously haven't seen the movie, but my first spring training, I got a Nolan Ryan story, right? And they probably weave throughout this entire movie. The one story was spring training. He was warming up, doing some innings, go down by home plate, smooth out the dirt, but stare in the visitor's dugout, right? Smooth out the dirt on the sides. And rookie guy sitting there going, what the heck is he doing? He's like, oh, he's just reminding us we don't bunt on him, especially during spring training, right? So if that's in the movie, hopefully there's tons of stories and millions of stories like that, I know. So you touched on something that Blum and I have talked about here before. The way we are around our families and the way we are around people we trust is significantly different, obviously, than the way we are around, Geoff likes to say the GP, the general public, until you get to know them. I think the Texas thing is great. This question's a little bit more about you in that your dad was fantastic, a role model, inspirational, but really, really, I think, kind of at that upper echelon. When did you kind of know that following in his footsteps might not be ideal for your life? I try to do this with my dad, and you want to live your own life, but I think when you have somebody like that you want to emulate and you want to be like so much, I mean, you've obviously done a ton of fantastic things on your own. You and your brother obviously doing the research for this project. So it's a long way to get to the question, is like, when did you know that you were going to forge your own path and then, kind of, start your life that way?
No, I give a lot of talks to groups, about sort of being yourself and living up to your God-given skills. And like I tell people, there's two ways to go. Either you sort of embrace that your dad is Nolan Ryan. And I used to tell people, even if I was an axe murderer, they'd be like, hey, there's Reid Ryan, the axe murderer. And, oh, yeah, that's Nolan Ryan's son. So, you either embrace it or you're renting jet skis and, down in Mexico somewhere. So one or the other. And so I decided, look, this is a big plus. But really it was my mom and dad that made me feel special. So I can really remember 2 times in my life. I was a good basketball player in high school, had the opportunity to play in college, same as baseball. My dad came to me and basically said, look, if you really apply yourself, like, you might have a chance to play professionally. I think you should go the route of baseball, but don't try to live up to what I did. You're a different kind of pitcher. You're going to have to learn how to, get your curveball over and throw your changeup and pitch backwards, and sort of sent me down that road of, hey, you don't have to be me. And then the second time was when I got released. That's a very tough time for anyone that's ever had that happen. And you kind of second guess, like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And you feel like a loser. And, it's just hard because you've been a baseball player your whole life. And my dad came to me and said, how many guys did you play Little League with? And I'm like, All-Stars, there were like 12 of us. Like, well, how many of those guys made high school baseball team? 4 or 5. How many of those guys played in college? 2. How many guys on your college team got drafted? 2. How many played as long as you? None. And so he kind of ended up making me really feel good about, hey, you had a great career and, hold your head high. Not everybody's going to be a major leaguer. Not everybody's going to be, me. And you did the best with your God-given ability, man. You should be proud. And so I walked away from that feeling like, you know what, check that box. That part of life was great. And now it's time for a new challenge.
That's pretty amazing. That's some good insight into who Nolan probably really was and who he was to you in motivating you and helping you understand. It's kind of interesting to see that dynamic, as that's something on the outside. Nolan Ryan is a mythical character who's the strikeout king, the intimidation and things like that, but who had a real true understanding of how hard it actually was to play this game. And obviously it motivated you outside of the game of baseball, and you've proven your worth in many other ways. And that was, you kind of hinted at how your dad was on the field and how he was in the clubhouse. And like you said, I've had the opportunity to meet him, interview him, talk with him off camera. And what amazingly humble is probably how I would describe him. An incredible storyteller, an incredible enthusiasm for the game. But I want to ask you, how did you approach him with this idea, and what was his reaction when you talked about making a movie about him?
Well, and it's funny because what you both have said is really encapsulated in what we've created, the art we've made, and so that's very cool that you guys have touched on some of those things. He said no, I don't want to do that.
Not shocking.
And the short answer, no.
And so we had to sort of, go back to the drawing board and formulate our game plan to attack him. And so we started with my mom. And she really said, look, Nolan, I was with you all these years, all over the place. I want you to make this movie for me. And my brother came at him with like, look, this is going to be really good for Nolan Ryan Beef and our other businesses. And I came at him of like, look, I'm going to be running the show as the executive producer. I'm going to make sure, you don't look like a goof. We don't, we honor your legacy. But at the same time, Geoff, I was very straightforward with, Bradley Jackson and Russell Groves about, this can't be a glorified home movie. And if this is going to be successful, it has to have controversy. Now, he doesn't have the, hey, I was a drug addict and I overcame it, or an alcoholic, or I lived under the bridge, or I gambled or beat my wife. Like, people love that in a movie.
He was too busy beating up on Robin Ventura.
We'll get to that. So really, this movie is about the enigma of Nolan Ryan. How do you rate somebody that is the all-time walks leader, all-time grand slam given up leader, all-time wild pitch leader, all-time strikeout, no-hitter? He's such a Paul Bunyan-esque figure, and how long he played, and you get to see the real Nolan Ryan about how he wanted to quit when he was with the Mets because he didn't have a lot of success. It was hard. How, my mom made him keep playing, and how family mattered to him because it was an escape from everything that was happening. And where he ended up really, taking off was in California because of the power of a coach. One guy connected with him, and it changed his career and made him a Hall of Famer. And so I think it's going to be a lot of layers of the onion peeled back, and people are going to get a real sense of what the true Nolan Ryan is, but then also hear from the others, and the not bunning is definitely in there. And I think for a baseball fan or somebody that wants a good family movie, all of them are rolled into this story called Facing Nolan.
Well, I think the wholesome part of it, the Texas, you can create controversy. We've all had that strife in our life. You mentioned getting out of baseball. That was one of my toughest times. I mean, one of the reasons we do this podcast, it was like, I was a baseball player till I was 30, and then nothing, right? And then what are you going to do with your life? So I think, we don't need like the drug addict, the living under the bridge, the beating the wife necessarily to create controversy. But I think what you mentioned, Paul Bunyan, is a great analogy to what your father is and his legacy, and that he, for me, somebody that kind of came up when he was getting out of the game, you just hear the stories. I mean, it was like folklore, and it might as well have been Paul Bunyan because he had all these fantastic kind of stories. I already touched on one. But I guess the other thing I want to ask about is with your mom convincing him. I mean, it was like a whole project of everybody. Your brother had this role, you had that role, like selling him on it. What do you think he got out of the project? If you've talked to him, like what was his reaction now that you're going to South by Southwest and you've put this all together? I know he's proud of you and your brother for producing it and doing it the right way. But what did he get something out of this that he will kind of feel good about?
I think he will. I think, look, for every guy that's ever competed at the highest level, there's a level of ego and pride that makes you great, that makes you a major leaguer. And if you're a Hall of Famer, it's even more. But he's also a very humble individual. He's watched it once, and it was like rough cut number 1, and we're on final number 10 version of it. So, and I go, hey, what'd you think? He goes, yeah, that's fine. So kind of like, just like, very humble. That's fine. But I can tell he's excited about it because he really got into who do you have doing it and who's doing an interview. And so what kind of my role was, and where I think I'm going to have more success, we're already working on another one of these, is that people trust me. They trust our family. And so we interviewed Roger Clemens, Pete Rose, Rod Carew, President Bush, Randy Johnson, going back to, Jerry Grody with the Mets, Bobby Grich with the Angels, Pudge Rodriguez, Craig Biggio. I mean, I can just go on and on of all these people that said yes to doing it because, one, the respect they had for my dad, but two, because they knew we were going to make something that was baseball-centric and a baseball insider, and we weren't going to make a mockery of anything of the game or them. And so that level of trust gave us access to a lot of players that normally some guy on the street, trying to make a movie about baseball would not have gotten.
You mentioned the names that you are interviewing in this documentary about your dad, Nolan Ryan. Of course, we're talking with Reid Ryan, the son of Nolan Ryan, a real Renaissance man, jack of all trades, and has been highly successful now as an executive producer, in the media world, which is awesome. But you talked about some of the guys that you're interviewing. I'm a baseball fan. You're a baseball fan. How much fun was it to be able to approach these guys and have those conversations and hear those stories?
Yeah, it was great. So normally, the networking in the game, I'd say, okay, who do we want to talk to if I didn't have their phone number? And fortunately, I have a lot in my time as president of the Astros because they had this confidential directory you could get, so I could sort of get to anybody. And, normally I'd text them. I'd say, hey, we're making a movie about my dad. Here's who I am. Most of them knew me. And then they just call me out of the blue, and we'd have great conversations. And the script normally went the same. Man, let me tell you a story about the time I faced your dad. And I'd be like, awesome, we need that in the movie. Make sure you do it again. And then it was like, yeah, sure. When do you want to do it? And we shot all over the place. What I think you guys will appreciate about this movie is it's the cinematography in it from a interview perspective is varied and very cool. So we shot Biggio in the Dome, got permission to do that in the Astrodome.
Awesome.
You know, we shot Randy at Talking Stick. We shot Pete Rose in Vegas at the new stadium. Some people like George Brett, we were at his house. We were at Pudge's house. So it's a nice mix of backgrounds. We shot President Bush at his presidential library in Dallas, which was cool. And so, you know, some of it's stadium, some of it's in you know, personal settings. But at the end of the day, it was just really fun to connect and talk baseball, because everything we're hearing right now is labor strife or rules changes, or, you know, it's stuff that those that love the game just take away. And this is so pure. And the key really for us, have you guys ever seen the movie Fastball at all?
Yes. Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple of the guys that worked on Fastball worked on this, and one of them is a guy named David
good.
Check. And the movie really is broken down into kind of four, what I'd consider styles. There's the interview style, if you saw the Jordan documentary, like interviews. Then there's kind of what they call verite, which is a lot of behind the scenes with my dad at the ranch and working cows and that kind of stuff. And then there is some theatrical reenactments from times in his career, second no-hitter, no video. You know, I mean, not even on TV.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of, believe it or not. And so those moments we recreated with former major leaguers that we convinced to come in and be Nolan Ryan at a certain point in his career. And then the last part that Dave worked on was the MLB archives. And we've got footage that people have never seen, because Dave was the archivist at MLB for almost 30 years. And like 1980, the series with Philly and the Astros, where 4 of the 5 games went extra innings. Back then, it was a 5-game series to go to the World Series. And we were able to get some incredible footage, and Howard Cosell and Keith Jackson were the announcers for that game. So that kind of tells you, like, people forget about that, but when you see it come together, folks are going to go, wow, there's some cool stuff in here I've never seen before.
I'm speechless.
No, I'm
looking forward to seeing it.
Talking about that 80 series, I mean, what's cool for me is being able to sit in the booth with the Houston Astros. I had an idea of what the Astros were and how some of these series went. But when I get the chance to get in the booth and interview Nolan Ryan, you know, we go through New York. I had a chance to talk to Keith Hernandez about the 86 series, working with Alan Ashby for as long as I did, Bill Brown, and some of that's where I think some of the fans, and it's great that this is going to be a national release, so people outside of Houston will get to know a little bit more about Nolan Ryan. Sorry to cut you off, David.
No, you're right. And Ash is great in this. You know, Alan worked with us for a long time.
Good.
And he is in it, and he does a great job in it as well. So the Astro years were sort of, in some ways, the Ranger years have some of the best moments, because it was later and the video was better, and there was a lot more you know, sort of ESPN coverage and stuff like that. The Astro years are heavy on the interviews, and so we have Kevin Bass, Alan Ashby, Phil Garner, you know, Terry Poole, Craig Reynolds, Mike Scott. I mean, it's just Jose Cruz, Enos Cabell. You start throwing all these guys in, and so many great personalities in there. I think they kind of make the personal teammate side probably better than anybody in this film.
That's the part I want to hear, right? Like, from the guys that were in the locker room with them. I mean, this is, you know, it's going to be fantastic. You already mentioned the Jordan documentary. I did watch Man in the Arena with Tom Brady, which was, you know, pretty good. I mean, I think just as former athletes and fans of the game, you know, the inside stuff is always great, and I know that people appreciate it. Now, you and your brother obviously learned how to make a film through this process. A lot of trial and error. You mentioned kind of the rough cut that you already showed, and now you're on, like, Final Cut number 10. I've listened to these people talk about being an author for the first time, making a movie. Why don't you tell us what other projects you might be working on, if that's possible? And then are they all going to be baseball or sports related, or is this something now that, Reid Ryan, the successful president of, the Astros and all these other things, are you now going to be film producer extraordinaire? Are we going to see you at the Oscars one of these days?
I don't know about that. We made a documentary on Altuve for MLB Network when I was here with the Astros, and that was really a fun process. And so I have a television background. Believe it or not, before I got into being a sports executive, I worked as a sideline reporter for the Rangers for a couple years, doing kind of the Julia Morales gig. And so I had a little bit of a background. We leaned heavy on the technical blocking and tackling from the pros, Russell and Bradley. My main job as executive producer really was to sort of raise the capital to make the film, and then help make a lot of the decisions on who we were going to put in it and where we were going to go about filming it. We have 20 pounds for a 1 pound bag. That's how much stuff we have. And so as we go to South by Southwest with this cut, it's an hour and 35 minutes. That film is ready to go. ESPN, Netflix, Hulu, we're getting inbound calls right now from all of these folks. We're hoping when we roll out of South by Southwest, we'll have an announcement on maybe who our streaming partner will be. But there's a chance they may say, hey, we want this to be a 2-parter or a 4-part documentary. And if that's the case, we have the amount of footage. And the reason that we went from version 1 to version 10 was we had to cut a lot of stuff out. It just was too much for the movie. And we ended up showing it to some test audiences. Some were made up of women and non-baseball fans. Some were made up of people that were just movie fans. Some were diehard baseball fans. Because you get so close in the making of it, like the Mets era. How much did we want to go into about Tom Seaver's influence on my dad? How much did we want to go into it on the '69 World Series? And so that part, we ended up shortening a little bit because it's an interesting story, but it's almost a story in its own. And when you play 27 years from wool uniforms and the World Series being in the daylight all day to the steroid era and the Bash Brothers and, that era, man, it's everything. And so that was the hardest challenge we had, was trying to pick and choose what goes in here. And there will be some people that say, hey, loved it, but, I wanted more of X, Y, or Z. And at the end of the day, we didn't want to make Shogun, the month-long series. So anyway, that's it. It is what it is. I think people will love it, and hopefully, if it goes well, then we're gonna move on to something else.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see this thing. You're doing a very good job of selling it to me, but I've already been a fan. But, I want to talk a little more current. I don't know how much we can get into it or how much you want to peel back on this one, but the current state of the game right now is a little bit frustrating because both sides seem to have their heels dug in on what their idea of a CBA should be moving forward. But maybe the question for you, because you've seen so many generations of the game of baseball, and we've been able to witness the greatness of what this game is, and we both, obviously love it and adore it. The state of the game right now, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I'm in a little bit of a strange position. I'm on a board at MLB that is now governing the minor leagues. I represent all 30 AAA teams. And so, look, I'm happy that the minor leagues are going to be playing. I was a player in '94. I decided not to cross the picket line, ended up shagging on the backfields for like 10 weeks straight, and then kind of had a terrible year after that. I care about the fans. At the end of the day, without the fans, none of us have jobs. That's the bottom line. And there are parts of everything that is going on in this. What I find interesting is this is not about guys making money at the top. It's about guys in the middle and the bottom. And as a player, former player, not a major league player, that feels good that those guys are being taken care of. From the major league owner's side, which I said at the table in the last CBA, it's the teams that don't really ever have a shot to win that people are saying, hey, what about these guys with competitive balance tax and some of that. And so this is painful right now. I hope it gets settled. But at the end of the day, I really, truly believe that everybody wants the same thing, which is I want my team to have a shot to be able to win at some point and feel like after the first month of the season, we haven't been eliminated from playoff contention. And, you know, the issue is trust, and hopefully some of that trust can be rebuilt and that we can move on down the road.
Absolutely. Reid Ryan, a jack of all trades and very good at every single one of them. I wish you nothing but success. I'm excited to see this film called Facing Nolan. Give the fans an idea of how to follow you, or how to follow the where this film can be seen, and all of everything that goes on with it. Just how do they find out where this is and how to follow what's going on with this project?
Yeah, no problem, Geoff. You can follow me on Twitter at Robert Reid Ryan. I'm not sure why I chose the longest Twitter name in the history, but when I got on, I put my full name in there, and then I was like, oh, that's my handle. Oh, well, I'm stuck with it. So at Robert Reid Ryan, and then we have a Facing Nolan both Twitter and Instagram page. And really the plan here is, we're going to go into South by. This will be fun. Hopefully we win an award. One of the funny stories is I was like, yeah, Dad, and if we win, that could be big for this. He goes, win? What do you mean win? Now the competitor, and I'm like, yeah, this is a competition.
All of a sudden he perked up.
And he was like, well,
His ears,
who's in this? And I was like, well, I pulled the thing out. I was like, oh, Tony Hawk has a movie. And he was like, Tony Hawk, the skater? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, oh, it looks like Ron Howard is putting a film in. He's like these are real people. And I'm like, yeah, what do you think this was? A bunch of high school kids? So
now your dad wants to kick Ron Howard's ass. Here we go.
He's like, Opie, we're coming for you,
I love it.
But anyway,
That's
so
awesome.
you guys will be seeing more. But, it'll come out this summer. And, in fact, we were about to roll out a plan before the lockout, missed games, and hopefully we'll still have it. But we're looking to do a ballpark tour this summer as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So we're hoping that after South by there is a deal announced with a major streamer / network, and then on top of that, people would be able to see it throughout the summer at theaters and in stadiums around the country. So stay tuned. Like everything else, we'll see how the lockout goes.
Yep, good time with executive producer Reid Ryan. All the best on that, and I can't wait to see you again. Always good hanging out with you. And when this thing hits it and you do win that award, we'll have you back on to talk about the winning speech and maybe how your dad felt about it.
All right, I appreciate it, boys. Dave, good to see you. Geoff, Blummer, be good. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Reid. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe and hit the bell so you can get notified when we post new videos.